So hey everyone, this isn't a scary moment at all, standing in front of you. So I'm Lewize and I'm the founder of Exit Entry. So anyone recognise this woman, Rosa Parks? On December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks was like anybody else. She boarded a bus after work one day, exhausted and just looking for a seat. She got on the bus, took a seat, third row from the front. Halfway into that journey, the bus driver turned around and said, "Rosie, you need to move. You're sitting in the coloured section, and there's a white man after getting on the bus, and he wants your seat." As you can imagine, this didn't go down too well, but this is what coloured people in the 50s were used to. Why did it make a difference? Children who were of a coloured nature and black walked to school every day, looking at children their own age on a bus, getting that school bus. So Rosa decided on that day that actually she was a bit tired, but she wasn't tired because she'd been working all day or exhausted. She was tired of doing nothing. So she turned around and she said, actually, no, I'm not going to get off this bus. And that started one of the biggest civil rights activist movements of its day. For 381 days after this, every coloured person who lived in Montgomery, Alabama stood beside Rosa Parks in her quest for non-segregated spaces on buses. At the end of that year, the law was changed. So from one small movement and seat on a bus, one woman changed the course of history. And when people asked her afterwards why she did this, they just presumed it was because she was tired, but her response to all that was no, she was just tired of doing nothing. A remarkable woman who I share some of her name with, Louise McCauley, so I'm going to hang on to that piece, and actually some heritage with as well. So, numbers, we're all obsessed with them. As academics, we look at results. As students, we strive for our points at leaving cert, then we come into college and it's all about numbers. As buyers, we're looking at all the bargains and pennies and what we get at the weekend to go out. It's numbers, 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 numbers. It's about how many kids we're going to have, what price a house is going to cost us, and ultimately our lives are surrounded by them. But what I'm examining today is, does that define who you are? Is that who you are, your academic number, the number that surrounds you on a daily basis? Or are these numbers part of your story as students entering probably one of the most stressful times and exciting times of your life? So I've put together some numbers around my story, which I'm going to share with you now. So I've had 4 businesses, and I say that in a very loose term. And each of these 4 businesses, as you'll hear now, are just completely different. And I had no experience entering into any of them at any stage or academic qualification relating to them. So you'll see there's a predominant number here is 0, which is my experience. So I had my first business at 15, and I say that in a loose term. So I attended Holy Faith Convent Clontarf. Anyone here from student of there? No? Anyway, the nuns have a lot to answer for. We went on an exchange program to Russia when I was 15. And prior to going there, and this was pre-online because, as you can see, I'm middle-aged, I had heard from a reliable source, it wasn't the internet, as I said, that there was a major problem to be solved in Russia at the time, and that was that teenagers had no access to denim jeans. This, I thought, was a total atrocity. I was a curehead at the time and just couldn't see how a teenager could live without denim in their lives. So I was working in a shop called Furlongs at the time over on an avenue in Clontarf, making probably the equivalent to €10 a day. And I saved that money for probably a couple of weeks anyway. I went into Dunnes Stores and bought 6 pairs of jeans and brought them with me to Russia. At the time when we were on the trip, we attended a shopping centre to spend our whatever money we had, and I nipped off to the loo and ultimately set up shop underneath an escalator and sold the jeans within 5 minutes, making a profit and solving a problem and having some very happy clients. And that was my first business. Later on, sorry, I'm just looking at the numbers, trying to remember. Later on, I entered into when I was in school, There's various parts of our backgrounds that we remember, and there was one part which left a lasting impact on me. My background is in design, so when I was in school I wasn't particularly academic, but I did love art and I loved English and history. And we had a new art teacher, and there was 30 of us in our class, and she used to line us up in a row and mark us accordingly. So I always kind of came, I'd say, in the top 5 percentile of that. And I had a new project and I was working on it, and I presented it to her. And this particular time, she moved me halfway down the spectrum, so I was on the 50 percentile. And she said to me, Louise, I actually, you would have got the first place in this line if you had done that work yourself. That left a lasting impact on me, because I worked my ass off on that project. And it was, I suppose, part of my story in terms of resilience and rising above negative comments. And later on, I attended college. I went to the College of Marketing and Design, and then on to the Lewize College of Art and Design. At the time, I was from probably a middle-class background, but my dad was working 2 jobs, and his business at the time wasn't doing too well, and there wasn't a lot of money in the house at the time. And I had massive fees to meet and equipment to buy, so I'm sure we're all familiar with this story. So £700 at the time was the reason I dropped out of college at my 3rd year, because I couldn't afford some of the equipment. But that was okay. Hey, I got a job at Dunnes Stores at the time. And in my first job, I worked as a visual merchandising manager and managed to secure 5 pay increases in the first year. Probably because I just never stopped working and never stopped asking, because I felt that if you put the work in, you can reap the rewards. I now feel sorry for my manager at the time, Pat Tully. Every time he saw me coming, he nearly had a heart attack. Anyway, I transitioned from that period of working in Dunnes to go into design. So at that time, I was working with different retailers, and I got an opportunity to work with a lot of PR companies and interior design companies, and designers like Jasper Conran, Kelly Hoppen. They were launching in Debenhams at the time, and I decided to work for myself, and I launched a company called Living Design, which was very successful. It spanned over 8 years, and we did large-scale residential projects, listed buildings, beautiful buildings, and then commercial developments. One of my most interesting projects when I worked in commercial development was the rebranding of an undertaker's. And what really was of interest to that is, as any startup, they'll say you need to walk in people's shoes. And really, to get an insight into this market, you're dealing with people who are going through a huge, who need huge empathy, and families with loss. So a lot of the market research was around that piece, and it was really, really satisfying as a company owner to work on a project like that. Unfortunately, the crash came, and so did my business within 6 months. I was pregnant with my 2nd child, and I thought, oh, what am I going to do? My husband is self-employed as well, and I thought, okay, I constantly work. I need to create another business, and looking at different market opportunities, I opened up a cat boarding kennels, which obviously has nothing to do with design or renovation. I had this business for 3 years. I have a huge passion for animals, and at this time I was quite lucky, because I had access to stables which we converted, and I ran that business for 3 years. There again, I was in a financial situation where I needed to return to work on a full-time basis to increase my salary. So I went back for the first time in a long time to work for somebody else. This was the pinnacle of my decision-making to go back to college. It was probably the worst experience of my entire life. And I'm sure as students we all have good and bad experiences, but there's probably 1 or 2 in your lifetime which you'll always remember, and this was one of them, and it was challenging. So you either sit in a situation where you feel sorry for yourself, or you get your ass up off that seat and decide that you're going to control your life and you're going to move forward. That's the decision I made. So I decided to return to education at the grand age of 40. Any mature students in the audience? One? Oh, hello. Okay, so I was very mature, and in some ways. So I set upon my quest to find a course that was suitable for myself. I was looking at user interface psychology, human behaviour, a broad spectrum of it. But what I didn't expect to happen is to find my new business while I was on this journey. So what I saw as a slightly mature student when I came to look at these courses was exactly what I saw 20 years previous. I saw students walking around with their parents and looking at brochures at career fairs, and lots of parents doing the work with the brochures, and the parents looking, or the students looking really fed up because it was coming up to exam time and leaving certificate. And I thought to myself, there's something wrong here. There's something really wrong, because this is not how students communicate. And actually, I was in college 20 years previous, and this picture looks exactly the same. Yes, we know that the economy is changing at such a rate that in 5 years' time, we don't even know what jobs are going to exist, let alone the skills to be able to adapt to these needs. So I was saying to myself, something has to change here. At the time, I was reading a book called The Lucifer Effect by Philip Zimbardo. I have a slight obsession with human behaviour and environmental influences on that, so why we do the things that we do. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, things have changed. In my day, 20 years ago, you were lucky to have a job, but here we are with these amazing students, and employers are lucky to have them. So why is this that it's all this corporate language, and they're not speaking to students the way they could or should? And the other thing that reminded me as well was that I had done some charity work previously, probably about 10 years previous, and I met an amazing little girl. She was 9 years old, from Tala, and she literally arrived to an activity weekend with a toothbrush in her hand and a plastic bag. We were there for a week doing water sports. She came in one set of clothes. She kayaked, swam, showered, and slept in those clothes for 1 week, whether they were wet, dry, or whatever. And why did she do that? She did it because she literally had nothing. So this child, I'll just call her Jade, has always been to the back of my mind. And I thought to myself, well, here we are at these career fairs with these, students who are from backgrounds of parents that care and can provide that support. But what about the likes of Jade, this amazing child, highly intelligent, who doesn't have that support? And that really, really bothered me. So that set me on my quest for my fourth business, which now is Exit Entry. So Exit Entry is a new platform which showcases the soft skills of third-level students. So we're looking at key skills, more than your academic number, and we're looking at something really interactive and cool. It's an online app which is going to be launched in 8 weeks' time, and we have a homepage now where you can register your interest. We have some amazing multinational trial partners involved in this. So all this is, it's an interactive app where you showcase your skills through video and photo footage. We analyse those skills, and then that's fed back to the employer to give them a deeper insight as to who you are. So we're now building our global student community. So I'd ask you, if you don't mind, to log on to this, register your interest, and we will be launching in 8 weeks' time. What I'd like you to take away from my talk today is that just to remember that everyone is equal, okay? That you do not need to be experienced or have an academic qualification in one area to be able to grow a business or think about transferring into another area. Everything is possible. The rules are, there are no rules, okay? Just go out there and smash it. You're all capable of amazing things. You've done amazing even getting to DCU today. The other thing, I have to do a few name calls in terms of, obviously we're incubated here in DCU. We have an amazing psychology team. So I'd like to mention Professor Finian Buckley, Dr. Johan Isartel, Theo Lynn, Paddy O'Boyle in Invent, Tom Bannon in Enterprise Ireland. I'm sure I've missed somebody else. And to my incredible tech partner. If my one bit of advice on starting a new business is get out there and talk to people. I've been able to build this business literally with nothing other than goodwill and amazing people around me and an amazing team. So thank you. Okay.